actually is going on and do those interviews, yes, I think you're going to get a criminal element, definitely.
I think it's appalling. I think it's disgusting what has happened.
Cries for help going unanswered. Some residents left for days in soiled bedding. What Canadian soldiers say they witnessed while helping battle COVID-19 in long-term care homes. They were called in to help homes that were being decimated by COVID-19, and what they claim to have witnessed in 5 facilities here in the GTA is disturbing, from cockroaches and flies to staff disregarding proper infection control procedures. The allegations are part of a report from the Canadian Armed Forces. Lisa Shing is live tonight outside Eatonville Care in Etobicoke, one of the homes named in the report. And Lisa, some truly shocking allegations coming out tonight.
There were, Dwight, and quite an emotional report to read. It seemed it resounded with politicians that way as well, saying it could be someone's mom or dad facing these conditions. So a lot of disturbing details that the military has observed in these 5 long-term care homes in the GTA, including here at Eatonville, that's seen dozens of deaths during the pandemic. For about a month now, members of the Canadian military have been helping in the fight against COVID-19 in 5 Ontario long-term care homes, all in the Greater Toronto area, including Eatonville, where allegations of abuse have surfaced.
It was hard to get through. It was the worst report, most heart-wrenching report I have ever read in my entire life.
That report from the military contains scathing observations about the treatment of residents and the conditions they live in. At Eatonville, COVID-19 patients were left to wander, and there was a culture of fear to use supplies because they cost money. At Hawthorne Place in North Toronto, reports of equipment not being disinfected between patients, ant and cockroach infestation, and forceful feeding causing audible choking.
I had obviously a range of emotions of anger, of sadness, of frustration, of grief. It is extremely troubling.
The coroner's office is now investigating a resident's death at Orchard Villa, which has seen the highest number of deaths in the province. Staff were observed not sitting residents up for feeding, which may have resulted in the death. If warranted, that information will be handed over to police. Patients were also left in soiled diapers.
I think it's disgusting what has happened. Just the dignity of these patients in long-term care not being cleaned. These are just standard operating procedures.
The military observed residents weren't getting adequate nutrition at Altamont Care Community because of a staffing shortage. And at Holland Christian Homes, staff left food in a resident's mouth while they were sleeping. After receiving criticism, his initial commission into long-term care didn't go far enough. Ford is now not ruling out a full public inquiry.
There's going to be justice. There's going to be accountability.
Seniors advocates say there also needs to be systemic change. That's better training for staff, higher paid staff so they're not working at multiple homes, and smaller homes so there's more personalized care.
These are real fundamental problems with our long-term care system that of course a pandemic was going to exacerbate, but they always existed.
It's not that we don't have the tools, it's that we haven't used the tools.
Now, it's important to note that 4 out of the 5 homes are for profit. They're privately run, and just 1 is not for profit. So it does bring into question whether or not that for-profit model played a role in all of this. But provincial officials aren't commenting on that just yet, Dwight.
Some really serious allegations laid out in the report. Lisa, what does the government plan to do next?
Well, Premier Doug Ford said today that he has asked for a 30-day extension for the military. The federal government says it's reviewing this request, but Trudeau said today that he is willing to help. As for that bigger question of whether or not the province can actually of long-term care homes going forward in the future, Doug Ford said that would require federal money. And I should note, we did reach out to the 5 long-term care homes, but did not receive a response, Dwight.
Lisa, thank you. The loved ones of those who died inside these long-term care homes are expressing anger over the details in the report. Nellie Nanowski has their reaction.
I truly believe, knowing my father as well as I do, that he actually suffered severe dehydration, which led to his death.
The military's report doesn't surprise Kathy Parks. Her father, Paul Parks, had only lived in Orchard Villa for 5 months before he contracted COVID-19 and died. But in those few months, there were numerous issues.
Every month after that, there was something, sometimes minor, sometimes a little bit bigger. There was a couple of days where he hadn't been fed, and he called me complaining of hunger.
The report details the neglect the military witnessed in 5 Ontario homes after being called in by the province on April 22nd. June Morrison's father was also at Orchard Villa, where 77 people have now died.
He could have survived had he not been in there. He could have survived. I think there's criminal act, and I think that'll the police investigation, once they actually go in there and see what actually is going on and do those interviews, yes, I think you're going to get a criminal element definitely on the hands of the management and admin.
So far, 1 death has been sent to the coroner for investigation, but the Premier says there could be more.
As soon as we receive these reports, we launched a full investigation into these allegations. This includes an investigation by Ontario's Chief Coroner. The results of these investigations will be shared with police to look into any possible criminal charges, and I will also make the results of these investigations public.
This is my own experience. I haven't talked to...
For Gary Clark, it's a step in the right direction. Both his parents died at Altamont Care Centre, another home flagged in the report. He says staff never told him just how sick his parents were.
You could only make decisions based on the information that you have. So if you get the accurate information, then you're able to make a better decision.
The families we spoke to say that the system needs to change, and they believe that there are many long-term care homes that need to be investigated. So they're urging anyone with family members inside a home to go directly to the ministry with their complaints. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
You can read the full report from the military for yourself. You can find it on our website. That's at cbc.ca/Toronto. We are following breaking news from near King and Peter downtown, where at least 4 people have been injured in a shooting in the entertainment district. A man and a boy have been rushed to hospital with possible life-threatening injuries. A woman with serious injuries has also been brought to hospital. A 4th victim is being treated at the scene, but it's not believed that that person was actually shot. It happened around 4 this afternoon in front of the Bisha Hotel. Here's what a witness told us they saw and heard.
I hear a couple gunshots. At first I didn't think it was serious, but then it kept going, so I was like, of course, it's like gun or something. So I moved back a little bit to obviously not be in the scene. And after it calms down, after a bit, I moved back in the street to actually check out what happened. And some young lady, mid-20s, I don't know how old she was, I saw her sitting down. At first I thought she was scared, but then she got shot on the side, and I was like, it's bleeding. But it wasn't that much blood. It wasn't that, I don't know, it was a ricochet or a direct shot. I can't tell. But then she was crying, but then we ran forward, called the cops, and an ambulance came, and they took her away. She's good now, hopefully. The last I saw, she was okay.
Police have not released any information about possible suspects, but they have found a gun. We will bring you any updates to the story as we get them. For almost 3 years now, a turf war has been raging across the GTA's towing industry. There have been murders, arsons, and countless acts of intimidation, all designed to ward off rival tow operators. Well, today, police announced 4 organized crime groups have been behind much of the violence. John Lancaster with more on how these crimes cost us all.
Tow trucks torched, rival towers shot, 4 of them fatally. Today, police revealed 4 organized crime groups have orchestrated much of the violence.
Organized crime begins with an opportunity to make money and a level of greed that leads to criminality and violence. The towing industry and its lack of regulations have bred exactly that environment.
Dubbed Project Platinum, police say they've made 20 arrests, confiscated 11 tow trucks, as well as dozens of weapons. But what started as a fight for turf and towing jobs transformed into fraud police say was much more profitable.
They staged collisions using drivers they recruited. They deliberately cause collisions on roadways and in parking lots across the GTA.
The crashes involved high-end vehicles. Police say the accused conspired with body shops and physiotherapists to inflate injury and insurance claims, pushing up premiums for all Ontario drivers. They allegedly torched the office of a lawyer who was hired to investigate the tow truck companies. Joey Gagne says he started to see problems about 3 years ago.
The arrest will help with the violence. I'm pretty sure it's a very tiny group of operators that have gotten escalated or elevated the violence part. So we're hoping that this will change. This will be a significant change into what we're used to.
Both Gagne and police agree a lack of industry oversight has led to Wild West showdowns on Toronto area highways. Last week, a driver captured video of these $600,000 heavy wreckers seemingly bumping and grinding each other to get to a crash scene first. Meanwhile, police say they have plenty of heavy lifting ahead.
We could be seeing an additional 30+ arrests or more.
Police say the industry needs province-wide rules to prevent crime syndicates from entering the towing business. In the meantime, they hope these latest arrests will reduce the level of chaos. John Lancaster, CBC News, Toronto.
For the first time in more than 2 weeks, the province is reporting fewer than 300 new cases of COVID-19. Ontario has 287 new cases today, more than 100 cases lower than the numbers we've seen in the last week. It's important to note the province missed its testing target by a wide margin, having completed less than 10,000 tests. Ontario has capacity for more than 20,000 tests a day. Now, the province is reporting 21 new deaths linked to COVID-19. These new numbers are Ontario's lowest daily total since late March. The COVID-19 pandemic is now almost exclusively a problem in the province's big urban areas. Data analyzed by CBC News show nearly all new infections in Ontario are happening in the GTA, Ottawa, and Windsor. Mike Crawley has more.
The provincial government's strategy toward COVID-19 has been uniform across the province. The same lockdown measures imposed in Toronto are also in place in Timmins and everywhere in between. Well, the pandemic started off hitting most parts of the province at roughly the same rate. That's not what's happening now.
We obviously are seeing a disproportionate amount of cases in certain regions in Ontario than others.
Right now, there are roughly 4,100 active cases of COVID-19 in the province. 3/4 of them are in the Greater Toronto area. Add in Ottawa, Windsor, Essex, and Hamilton, and just 8 public health units account for 90% of Ontario's active cases.
Ontario is very diverse, so it doesn't make sense to have a policy that applies to the entire province if not the entire province is being affected. So the policies that you bring into place in areas like the GTA, could be different from, let's say, Sault Ste. Marie or Sudbury.
Yet different treatment for different regions is not currently in the plan from Ontario's public health leaders.
Let's say hairstyle and one's open and the other's not. So then everybody from this one just drives over and gets their hairstyle in that one. And so you bring all those infections over there.
The idea of a one-size-fits-all solution for Ontario is drawing criticism from a growing chorus of experts.
You will have a different behavior based on your risk in Thunder Bay than maybe someone in downtown Toronto would need to have. So I would like to see that switch to a more regionalized approach.
That's what's happening in Quebec. Restrictions are remaining in place longer in the Montreal area, where the pandemic has hit hardest. Similarly, in Alberta, lockdown measures have been eased in most parts of the province, but not all. Here in Ontario, Premier Doug Ford is acknowledging that there are hotspots for COVID-19 in certain urban areas. Still, he's resisting the calls to reopen the rest of the province on a faster timetable. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
I think it's too early to complain, but yes, another hot day as the heat warning for Toronto continues. People using this time to enjoy the outdoors, barbecuing and even taking a dip in the water. The city is reminding those who want to take advantage to do so responsibly, staying 2 meters apart and avoiding crowded areas. The city also opened up cooling centers to help those who may need an indoor space to cool down.
Dwight,
yes.
it's too early.
It is too early. I'm not complaining. I drove by the beach today. People are out there enjoying the weather, but they were keeping apart. They were keeping their distance.
Yeah, and that's very good to see. And you know, it's only going to be for another day or so, and then things will start to change. So this isn't too bad. There are obviously some health risks, which we've been going over, and so just something to be mindful of, kind of taking it easy and finding shade if you need it, and having lots of water as well. So we're into this heat warning, and in fact, it was extended. There were a few areas through here around Kingston that were just in a special weather statement as of yesterday, and they've been added into the warning. Just the Picton region there that's not included, but still special weather statement there because of these temperatures, but also really it feeling like, with this humidity, feeling like we're in those upper 30s. As well, we tend to get some of these afternoon thunderstorms bubbling up, so you can see some of those pop-up storms here. And in fact, this is mostly obviously into cottage country around Owen Sound, Collingwood, around Barrie too. I put the lightning strikes on. You can see, so these are still something to be very mindful of and careful with. They tend to die down though as we get into the evening hours, and staying away from the GTA at this point. But your temperatures, current, not the highs, the current humidex is 37, and we do see things overnight coming down into the high teens, Dwight. And as for when we're going to really see a cool down, I'm going to come back with that information.
No complaining. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
The weather update is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. Take advantage of special offers now. It's hard to stop a Trane.
Residents of a Mississauga condo say they are being taken advantage of during the pandemic because of a recent rule. The condo corporation is charging tenants $30 per day for long-term visitors. Some residents argue that is not fair, especially because some are sheltering in place with loved ones during the COVID-19 lockdown. Chris Glover has the story.
It's just crazy. I don't understand why I have to pay almost $1,000 to stay at my parents' place for a month.
As the COVID-19 outbreak was getting out of control in New York City, Rochelle Wassim left her Queens apartment to return to the Mississauga condo her family has had for 17 years.
That's the only reason I came back, more so just to, put my parents' mind at ease.
At the end of February, the condo notified residents due to an increase of water consumption for a substantial increase of long-term visitors. Starting March 1st, it would charge any visitor staying longer than 2 weeks an occupancy fee of $30 per day. The Wassims disregarded the fee, but by mid-May received this letter compelling them to register their visitor and charging them more than $500 for the legal letter. That would be on top of the $1,000 worth of occupancy fees for Wassim's 1-month stay. And Wassim says both her parents are off work, receiving federal emergency COVID benefits.
To ask for $1,500 out of the blue at any time is a lot, but I think particularly in these circumstances when, not just my family, but a lot of folks are stretched, it's a lot of money to ask for.
Radwan Al-Talib lives in the same building. After fleeing the Syrian war in 2012 with his wife and 2 daughters, in 2015 they had their son. That's 5 people staying in 2 bedrooms.
Occupancy fees started 5 years ago when I have a little son.
Prior to it becoming a daily fee March 1st, he says the building charged a $30 monthly occupancy fee for more than 2 people per bedroom. But for Al-Talib, it isn't just his son. Last year, his mother-in-law came to Canada as a refugee. Now he says he has to pay $30 a day for both her and his son. That's $1,800 a month he never plans to pay.
They're taking advantage in this kind of pandemic.
So you can't just pull a number out of the hat.
Condo lawyer Audrey Loeb says occupancy fees are supposed to be tied to the expenses incurred because of the guest.
The notion of charging without any justification, $30 a day, and without an invoice to support that, in my view, is an unreasonable expense.
In a statement, the condo corporation's lawyer said these fees cover the increased utility costs and wear and tear on the common elements. It also said due to COVID, it had postponed the payment until June and possibly later.
I don't see how that's a compromise at all. June 1st is not that far away, so it's imminent. We're going to have to pay it next month, and it's not like our financial situation is suddenly going to be okay next month.
They're now connecting with others in their building to figure out a way to fight the fees. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead, the NHL looks to get back on the ice, and Toronto is one of the spots on the short list of potential hub cities. But first,
I'm asking you to stop recording me.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to
And
me.
I'm taking a picture and calling the cops.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
A viral video of an argument between a white woman walking her dog and a black man bird watching in New York Central Park has led to her firing. And she's Canadian. The story behind the video coming up next. Two viral videos taken yesterday in different U.S. cities are both sparking widespread anger and accusations of racism. In one shocking encounter, a black man dies after being restrained by a white police officer. In the other, a white woman has lost her job after accusing a black man of wrongdoing. Stephen D'Souza has the details.
Please don't come close to me.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop recording me.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
The confrontation took place Monday in a dense wooded area in Central Park called the Ramble. Christian Cooper, an African American, was bird watching. He says he asked a white woman, Amy Cooper, no relation, to follow the rules and put her dog on a leash. He filmed the encounter. Amy Cooper calls 911.
There is an African American man. I'm in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog.
Though little seems to change, her voice escalates.
I'm being threatened by a man in the Ramble. Please send the cops immediately.
Christian Cooper told NBC he took the video to show he wasn't intimidated.
We live in an age of Ahmaud Arbery, where, Black men are gunned down because of the presumptions that people make about.
Amy Cooper, reportedly a Canadian who attended the University of Waterloo, told NBC News she overreacted.
It was unacceptable. And words are just words, and I can't undo what I did, but I sincerely and humbly apologize to everyone, especially to that man, his family.
She realizes that the stereotypes about Black men are vast, that most people hold them regardless of race. And she can actually play that up in that scenario to have people be more likely to believe her than to believe him.
Rayshawn Ray is a fellow at the Brookings Institution and studies race.
Well, she obviously knows that Black men have a contentious relationship with the police.
I can't breathe. He points to another video showing police brutality. George Floyd, a Black Minneapolis man, died after an officer pinned him to the ground, his knee over his neck. 4 officers involved have been fired. In the Central Park case, the NYPD says there will be no charges. Amy Cooper, though, has been fired from her job at an investment firm. And her treatment of her dog during the video, yanking it repeatedly by its collar, has caused her to give up the animal. Cooper says she also now realizes not everyone sees police as protectors.
And unfortunately, this has caused me to realize that there are so many people in this country that don't have that luxury.
Ray says consequences are important and hopefully prevents incidents like this from happening again. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, Toronto.
As the U.S. nears the stark milestone of 100,000 deaths linked to COVID-19, Donald Trump is sharpening his attacks against his critics even as he defends his administration's handling of the pandemic. Katie Simpson has more.
Overall, most states are seeing a decline in COVID case numbers or are at least remaining stable. But some of the first places to reopen, Georgia, Florida, and Alabama, are among about a dozen states that are seeing an increase. The president defended his handling of the outbreak while making an announcement about lowering the price of insulin for seniors, though he used the event to attack his opponents and repeated a false claim linking Joe Scarborough, a former congressman turned cable TV news host, to the death of one of his congressional staffers in 2001.
Yeah, a lot of people suggest that, and hopefully someday people are going to find out. Certainly a very suspicious situation, very sad and very suspicious.
The president went on to say the family of the woman who died probably wants answers, even though he's aware the woman's widower has asked him to stop politicizing her death and asked Twitter to delete the president's tweets on this issue. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
The NHL says they've reached an agreement with their players on a plan to return to the ice. No firm dates have been set, but definitely a step in the right direction for fans. Dan Sagan joins us now with more. And Dan, the NHL's plan includes playing games out of 2 hub cities?
That is correct. The NHL and Gary Bettman today really adding some detail to a proposal that was agreed to over the weekend, really, with the NHLPA. It now has been confirmed that they're looking to play all of their games in this 24-team play-in tournament that will happen probably in late July out of 2 hub cities. One of them could be Toronto. Toronto on a short list along with Canadian cities like Vancouver and Edmonton. Vegas is one of the front runners from the United States. We won't know exactly which 2 are picked for quite some time yet. But when they do get going, this 24-team tournament will give everyone who had a chance to win the Stanley Cup going in, and maybe a few others, that opportunity after this long delay because of COVID-19. There will be 12 teams from the Eastern Conference playing in one city, 12 teams from the Western Conference playing in another. The top 4 teams standings-wise would get a bye into round 2. The others would just have a best-of-5 play-in series. It could be a very exciting series. Right now it looks like Montreal and Pittsburgh would be involved. Toronto would end up against Columbus. So there should be some great action with a lot of upsets when they do get into this. And this is still a ways away. That would be phase 4 of the return to play plan that the NHL has right now. They're looking to enter into phase 2 next week with some players coming back into action. All this ultimately with the hopes of handing out a Stanley Cup sometime late in the fall. Here's the commissioner.
Any plan for the resumption of play, by definition, cannot be perfect. And I am certain that depending on which team you root for, you can find some element of this package that you might prefer to be done differently. But we believe we have constructed an overall plan that includes all teams that, as a practical matter, might have had a chance of qualifying for the playoffs when the season was paused. And this plan will produce a worthy Stanley Cup champion who will have run the postseason gauntlet that is unique to the NHL.
And the 7 teams who won't be part of this 24-team tournament head straight into the draft lottery. Phase 1 of that goes June 26th. The Ottawa Senators with the best chance of landing the #1 pick overall.
Well, Toronto can take Columbus. Dan Seguin from CBC Sports joining us live with an NHL update tonight. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
It is the big, bold plan to drastically change the downtown core and add some much-needed green space. But at what cost? After the break, why the price for Royal Deck Park could reach into the $3 billion range. Ontario has asked the federal government to extend the service mission of the military in long-term care homes. This comes after a disturbing report by Canadian Forces members describing severe neglect in Ontario homes.
On reading the deeply disturbing report, I had obviously a range of emotions of anger, of sadness, of frustration, of grief. It is extremely troubling.
Military personnel were first assigned to care homes in Ontario in early May. Their report was turned over to the government of Ontario on the weekend. Now, we spoke to a woman whose mom is at one of the homes named in the report, Eatonville Care Center in Etobicoke, for her reaction.
I mean, the priority for the government in reopening should be getting those places safe again. I don't want to have my hair cut. I don't care about that. I don't want to eat in a restaurant. What I want is to hug my mother. What I want is, when will I see her again? I cannot go in there because I can bring COVID into the home. She cannot leave, and I cannot go. And I feel as though she is waiting for COVID, because she is breathing the air of, by virtue of the report, a rat-infested place where they have rotten food and sick people and really, really poor conditions.
That was Jacqueline Mitchell. Her mother is in Eatonville Care Center reacting to the report by the military on long-term care. It's been more than a month since the province announced an extra pandemic top-up for healthcare workers, but so far they haven't received the money. And now they're asking why. Lorena Redikoff has more.
Some personal support workers were taking part in a drive-by rally for their colleagues when the Premier announced the extra pandemic pay.
So we needed this support for so long, and this has to happen.
More than a month later, the wait continues. The money promised is an extra $4 an hour, plus a $250 top-up per month for employees who work at least 100 hours.
There's a lot of frustration on the part of our members and workers in the industry because, again, they're working in extremely difficult circumstances right now, and this news was going to be a real bright light for them, something to look forward to, and then it just seems like it's continued to drag on and on.
Eligible employees include personal support workers, nurses, and housekeeping staff in healthcare, as well as shelter and respite staff, along with addictions workers. A group of healthcare associations sent a letter to the Premier yesterday asking for clarity.
It really does put a tension between the employers and the employees because they can't provide them with the answers that they need around, and this is going to be forthcoming.
Under this program, employers first receive the money from the government, then pass it on to their workers.
And a government who campaigns on cutting red tape should learn a little bit from their own behavior and put in place a system where the government pays the workers directly, like the other provinces are doing.
The money will start flowing next week.
As for why it's taken so long,
so I know they've had to wait a little bit longer than expected, but that's only because of the sheer volume and the number of transfer payment agencies that are involved with it.
It's unclear how soon workers will see the extra cash on their paychecks. The pay is retroactive to April 25th, when the announcement was made. Lorena Redikoff, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto's plan to build a massive park downtown is under fire tonight. A new report from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation claims the rail deck park will cost billions more than the city is planning to spend. Greg Ross is live tonight from the site of the proposed park. And Greg, this report comes at a time when we know this city is strapped for cash.
That's right, Dwight. The city is strapped for cash, the province is strapped for cash, the federal government is strapped for cash, and all three levels of government were expected to help pay for this park. It would have been an elevated park going over top of these railway tracks right behind me here, stretching all the way from here at Bathurst down to Blue Jays Way. It would have created, or could possibly create, up to 20 acres of new green space in the downtown core. But now you have to wonder, with this report, does it call into question the city's plans?
It's a unique concept, but it comes with a hefty price tag. The proposed rail deck park is to be built on top of the railway corridor that runs through the heart of downtown. City staff say it will cost about $1.7 billion to construct. Jasmine Pickle with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation says they're way off.
Rail Deck Park is going to be at least $3.8 billion, which is more than double what he thought.
Pickle says the biggest difference is the fact that the city is going to be so cash-strapped because of the COVID-19 pandemic, they'll have no choice but to borrow the money needed to build it. She says the interest alone would be astronomical.
It will probably add $1.5 billion to the cost of the project over time.
She says they also found a number of other areas where the city's projections were either low or simply not budgeted for at all.
There was also about $40 million in project management fees that the city overlooked.
But when we reached out to city staff today, they were standing by their original projections.
I can't comment on whatever math they've done.
City Councillor Joe Cressy has been one of the biggest proponents of the Rail Deck Park. He says city staff did a very careful assessment of costs, as well as taking into consideration many other factors.
We had an urgent need, especially in downtown Toronto, for green space before COVID-19. That need is only greater today with the need to physically distance from each other. And so you don't need to look much further than this past weekend where we had people crowding in parks.
From our perspective, we don't think that taxpayers could have afforded a $1.7 billion park before COVID-19, but certainly we can't afford a $3.8 billion park after.
Pickle says this should call into question some of the other projects the city is considering, like the proposed Meadowway Park in Scarborough, which would run along the Hydro Corridor.
When Central Park was created, there were critics at the time. When Millennium Park in Chicago was recently created, there were critics at the time. Well, the minute they opened, those critics quickly disappeared. And the same is true here for the City of Toronto. If we want to build a great city for the future, not just for today, we need to invest in it, and that means investing in great parks.
And today, Cressy and other members of city staff that I spoke with told me that right now the focus is solely on getting through this pandemic. But Cressy did say when they do get through it, they're going to look at a lot of these different projects and reassess things. But as it stands right now, Cressy tells me that the plan is still to move forward with Rail Deck Park. Dwight?
It would be nice to have some green space amidst all those condos behind you. Thank you, Greg. Have you been trying to figure out what activities are actually safe to do during this pandemic? As some businesses reopen and people flood Toronto parks, it can be confusing knowing the safest approach to day-to-day activities. As Lauren Pelly tells us, it's all about navigating each level of risk.
Have you been trying to figure out what's safe to do during this pandemic? If so, you're not alone. Think of the risk level like this. Green means go, the safest possible setting. Right now, that's still your home, spending time with only the people you live with. Or doing activities alone outside, like running, biking, or hiking. Yellow means proceed with caution. Those are settings that bring about a bit more risk. We're talking about outdoor activities with other people, like walking with a friend or hanging out in a park. You still want to take precautions, staying at least 2 meters apart and not touching the same stuff. Red means stop and think. These are high-risk settings you want to avoid. And they're all indoor spots where you're in close quarters with people from outside your household. That could be a crowded restaurant, stadium, or bar, or even a dinner party at your own home. But we all know sometimes you need to go inside to get things like groceries or medication. Put on a mask, keep your distance, make it quick, and always wash your hands.
Another day of above 30-degree temperatures, but this hot, dry weather isn't going to be around for much longer. Colette's back after the break with a look at your long-range forecast. Stay with us. We are coming right back. Colin, I was asking our director to look at your board. I'm like, Max, what's Colin going to talk about? We were both guessing it's going to be the heat.
Yeah, that's what we got to talk about here. And always when it's the first event of the season, too, we've got to go over all these reminders. So yesterday I was talking about how to kind of beat the heat, also looking at heat exhaustion. But I just want to remind you as well just how hot the car can get and why it's not safe to leave children or pets in the car. This is with an air temperature of 27 degrees, which we are exceeding in terms of just how quickly those temperatures go up and can cause heat stroke or even worse. And that's 27. Well, today, downtown Toronto anyway, 31.3 degrees. So another quick reminder is at that temperature, it means the pavement can be 62 degrees Celsius, especially as you get into the later afternoon hours with it heating all day. So for pets, I know we've got a lot of new pet owners out there with the pandemic. The pads of their feet, their paws, it's just too hot for them. So you have to make sure that if you can't put the back of your hand on the pavement or asphalt for 7 seconds comfortably, it's too hot for your pet. So you got to get them to the grass or put some booties on them. Okay, that's all your safety information. These are these daytime highs I mentioned. I said downtown 31.3. Well, for Pearson, 30.6, so still pretty extreme. This is why our warning continues, and we're going to carry this into Wednesday, and then things begin to change sort of subtly. Seeing some of these afternoon thunderstorms starting to dissipate. Those move out. It means we're not looking at active weather overnight tonight. We'll see partly cloudy conditions and another hot but nice day on Wednesday, just very, very muggy. And then for Thursday, that's when things change a little bit. Latter part of the day, we'll likely see some scattered showers and thunderstorms. The temperatures come down a little bit. They come down more significantly Friday when we exchange the air masses and a cold front goes through. So overnight tonight, this is what the readings look like. At least they're under 20 degrees. Tomorrow, though, back up towards 30 in most cases. Oshawa perhaps 29, feeling 35 to 40. Those subtle changes Thursday 27, Friday we'll see more widespread showers and thunderstorms as that cold front goes through 24. And then a whole different feel to things as we go towards the weekend. Dew points low, sunshine, temperatures back closer to seasonal, Dwight.
Are we calling 24 a cold front? Is that what you just said?
Well, it's the temperature as the cold front goes through. Come on, it's just kind of coming down.
Thank you, Colin.
You're welcome.
It's supposed to be a red carpet event where stars rub elbows and awards are handed out in a packed room. But last night, the Canadian Screen Awards were handed out virtually. Yelena Azik is here to set it up for us. Now, we have some winners, Yelena. How did that first night go?
Yeah, Dwight. So it was really wonderful to see all of these incredible documentaries go up. That was one of the categories that was awarded aside from news and sports. So let me give you a look at 2 docs that you might want to jot down if you're not already familiar with them so that you can watch them at some point because they are incredible. So number 1, let's talk about The Accountant of Auschwitz. Now, this is about an SS officer, one of the last remaining SS officers alive, who underwent trial in Germany. And it won Best Original Music, Best History Documentary Program, as well as awards for Best Editorial Research and Best Visual Research. This is a CBC doc. And this one is really touted as being something that challenges you when it comes to morality issues and issues of justice. So yeah, heavy-hitting doc to pay attention to The Accountant of Auschwitz. Now, another one to talk about, this is the one that ended up winning the Ted Rogers Prize for Best Feature Documentary. So this is sort of the big one overall. I talked about this one last night, but I'll just bring it up again. It's called We Will Stand Up. And if you recall, Dwight, this is the one that is about the life of Colton Boushie and his family trying to seek justice for that life and for the death of Colton Boushie. It depicts his family's struggle after the controversial acquittal of Boushie's killer. So that is another one that ended up taking home the big award for documentaries. Okay, so now let me give you a listen and a look at some of the winners because, as you know, Dwight, they've done this in an unconventional way. If anybody gets their name called out, they're supposed to send in a video instead of the typical acceptance speech up on a stage, which just can't happen. So I'm going to give you a look now at a couple of the winners from last night.
Hi, my name is Peter Canet. I'm somehow in my backyard right now representing an incredible group of people who just won a Canadian Screen Award for Best Interactive Production for the project Super Queeros. Do I wish that everyone on the team were in a ballroom right now celebrating this win in person? I do. Do I wish I had a haircut in the past 3 months? I do. And especially, I wish there wasn't a global pandemic going on right now that threatens the livelihood of the very art and artists we celebrated in this project.
Hi, it's Kelly McEwen, Executive Producer of Disasters at Sea. I'm here in my backyard with my rosé, my teammates at my own virtual viewing party. I wanted to thank you so much for your recognition and for this award.
It's so creative, right? I just loved that these people are putting so much effort into these acceptance speeches, Dwight.
We work in the creative industry, so we expect that from them. What is expected to happen over the next few nights now?
Yeah, okay, so every night up until Thursday is going to be the big Best Picture win. But as far as tonight goes, this is 7 p.m. You can tune into the live stream. They're going to be focusing on these two different categories. One is going to be youth-related programming, and the other is reality TV. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a listen right now. This is the CEO of the Academy here in Canada. Her name is Beth Jansen, and she talked a little bit about this idea of trying to do these presentations online and just moving forward in as positive a light as possible. Have a listen.
We're 2 weeks out, so it was all planned, and we just had to step back and walk away from it all. You know, like it's like at the end of those baking shows where it's like, you know, hands up, like that's what it was, but we were we were 2 weeks away, and you know, it's months and months and months of work. So obviously, this pales in comparison to what is happening in the world right now. But it definitely felt good to come back and be creative again.
All right, so there you go. And Dwight, the hashtag, just to give it to you, Canadian Screen Awards. Canadian is abbreviated to CDN. And check it out tonight at 7 p.m.
Thank you, Yelena.
You got it.
After the break, today's Frontline Hero. Stick around for that. We're coming right back. Frontline workers are risking their health every time they step foot in the workplace. It's something Butch knows all too well. He's a frontline shelter worker who was diagnosed with COVID-19. He went into self-isolation between late March and early April, but his former faculty advisor, Robin Byers, says the diagnosis has only driven him to work harder. She says when messaging with him, he told her life is hard to live right now, sure, but how hard do you think it is for the folks who don't have a real home, going from shelter to shelter, sometimes sleeping outside, not knowing if they'll eat today or even be alive the next day. In an email to CBC Toronto, Byers said Butch has taken on his role with a willingness to try any task and work hard. He and so many other shelter workers I know deserve recognition. And they are getting it tonight as our frontline hero. If you'd like to share a story about your frontline hero, send us a selfie-style video explaining why they are a hero to you. Tag us on Instagram at CBC Toronto, send us a message on Facebook, or email us at torontotips@cbc.ca. All right, one final check of this cold front that's going to be about 24 degrees there, call it, I hear.
It's going to be coming, Dwight, but that's Friday. We've got some time till we get there that we have to contend with this heat and with this humidity. So that heat warning still in place from Windsor to the nation's capital and most points in between. And by the way, the hot spot for Canada today was in Ontario, and it was actually Ottawa, the nation's capital today, up to 33.2 degrees. As I was saying earlier, we were at 30, just over for Pearson, just over 31 downtown. This evening, that temperature slow to come down, then 27 degrees, still feeling more like we're in the low 30s. Overnight, though, 18, partly cloudy skies. And then tomorrow afternoon, we do this all over again. So we're headed up to a high of 30. It's going to feel like 35 or even higher than that in terms of our humidex value. Winds, well, you get really more of a breeze if you're near the lakeshore. There, the temperatures are a little bit cooler. And Dwight's right, yes, that there is going to be a cold front coming through for Friday, so the temperature is still coming down into the mid-20s. No, the really cooler air will be behind that front. That's for the weekend, where the air mass isn't going to be as sticky and temperatures will be back closer to seasonal, just under 20 degrees, in fact, for the weekend.
We won't
Dwight.
worry about that until Friday. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Mike Wise is off. Marvel Tarouk has your next local news tonight at 11, right after the National. We will see you back here tomorrow at 6. Stay safe and have a great night, everybody.